Hello and happy Halloween. We're so happy you're joining us for today's special video. Today's video is a bit different because we're going to bring you 3 original tales of terror from our writers. Since these are fictional stories, the visual media may not match perfectly with the words, but we hope it's not too distracting and you still enjoy the video. And please, we'd love to know what you think in the comments section. Thank you so much, and once again, happy Halloween. Chapter 1. Don't Go Into the Tunnels. The saying goes, curiosity killed the cat, and in this story, curiosity got 3 friends stuck in the grip of a demon. 26-year-olds Madison and Rory were best friends from elementary school. They met when they were 10 and bonded over making up stupid games in their basements, playing video games, and watching horror movies. Madison and Isaac met at work in 2013 and married 3 years later. The 3 of them would all hang out and basically do the same things Rory and Madison did as kids. They were so into horror and the paranormal that the 3 of them chipped in on ghost hunting gear, an electromagnetic field meter, a temperature reader, and an audio recorder. Rory had been fascinated with the paranormal since she was a kid, and sure, maybe pushed Madison into the paranormal more than Madison liked. Rory grew up with her mom telling her that they lived in a haunted house with a ghost doing typical creepy things like whispering the mom's name, turning on and off the TV, and lightly touching the mom's face. So when Madison came over and they heard people whispering when they were the only ones home, they did what anyone would do. They grabbed knives and walked through the whole house, ready to wield the cutlery at any intruder. But there was no one there. This would be a story they tell people for years as possible evidence that ghosts are real. But they still had their doubts and wanted to get more substantial evidence. After all, they only heard the voices and didn't actually record them. In October 2018, Rory found an article on her city's prominent news website that a paranormal crew was holding an overnight ghost hunt in an abandoned sanatorium. The sanatorium was in a small town about 4 hours out of the city.
Hell yeah,
she said, not knowing that would soon become way too real. She texted the link to Madison and they gushed over how much fun it would be. They bought 3 tickets and booked a motel room in the small town. 2 weeks later, they packed their gear and drove the 4 hours to the small town. On the car ride, they drank energy drinks and talked about the history of the sanatorium, combining stories they had read while doing research on the building. The sanatorium opened in 1900 to house people with tuberculosis.
I heard he made doctors take out people's bones and lungs.
Madison said in a tone of wonderment and disgust.
Yeah, and the patients were given such strong medication that they'd puke, and then the nurses would make them scoop it up and put it in their breakfast bowl and eat it.
Rory added.
Oh,
Ew.
Madison and Isaac groaned.
I highly doubt that. I heard patients were just left in open air and in sunshine.
Isaac said. Rory rolled her eyes from the driver's seat, thinking that was a stupid thing to say.
Okay, if this were a horror movie, you would be the first to die,
Rory said. The 3 of them laughed.
I read that the building started to house dangerous young people once the tuberculosis vaccine was developed. One guy went missing and he's never been found,
Rory said.
He probably ran away.
Isaac said.
Well, I guess I would too if someone was messing with my body and making me eat my own puke,
Rory said. Once they arrived in the town, they checked into their motel, drove to the venue, and shot back some beers before entering the venue. The workers, or volunteers, led them upstairs to the 2nd floor in the kitchen. There, the paranormal crew had TV set up with live camera footage airing. The crew had already set up their live cams. The paranormal crew explained their equipment, the audio recorder, the EMF meter, the temperature meter, their cameras, and their Elmo doll. The three friends looked at each other with skeptical looks and laughed at the Elmo doll.
Yeah, very scientific.
Isaac whispered. The paranormal crew explained that the spirits could speak through the doll. The trio quietly snickered, thinking of the big news about the Elmo doll, who allegedly had said, "Kill James." Madison had been a bit creeped out by this story. Rory and Isaac thought it was totally fake. Then, the investigation started. They explored the kitchen first and found a door that had "help" written in red writing on the door. Rory rolled her eyes. Madison squeezed Isaac's hand a bit tighter. The group walked to the third floor and went to a room with peeling paint from the ceiling. There was a bed in the middle of the room. The paranormal crew said that no one could clean the room. Anytime someone tries, they are kicked in the back of the knees by an unseen force and their vacuum is unplugged on its own. The trio walked through several of the buildings, hearing ghost stories from the crew and not experiencing much. The Elmo doll would occasionally say something like,
Ew!
or,
Over there!
but the trio brushed that off to the doll being able to be programmed. Then the trio and the paranormal crew went to the building that housed the dangerous youth. A paranormal investigator said someone grabbed her by the throat, lifted her up, and choked her against the wall. It only loosened its grip because someone else entered the room. The paranormal crew opened a door leading to tunnels. They said that no one would be going down there because it was too dangerous, but it was the most haunted part of the building. The paranormal crew said they did an EVP sessions at the entrance to the tunnels and caught a voice saying,
"You're next.
and
God won't save you."
the paranormal team said that they thought something demonic was down there. They told the story of a young man named Todd Barker who was sent to the sanatorium as a 16-year-old after murdering his sister, mother, father, and grandparents. When he was interrogated by the police, he said he hadn't done it. He repeated that again and again until someone said in a sinister voice,
"He made me do it."
The paranormal investigators explained that Todd killed other patients at the sanatorium. He punched a window, grabbed a shard of glass, and nearly decapitated another patient. That murder landed him in isolation. While Todd was in isolation, patients swore that he appeared at the foot of their bed in the middle of the night on all fours. They said his eyes were glowing and red and he just sat there. But no one understood how he could have gotten out of his locked room. A week after Todd appeared at the beds, the head physician somehow got locked in the body incinerator and died a gruesome death. After that, the nurses locked Todd in the tunnels. They thought Todd was somehow responsible for the doctor's death. Laurie lagged behind the crew and put a nearby scrap of wood in the door to the tunnels to keep it open. The trio continued to the next building, and then, when the paranormal crew was distracted, they ran back to the other building to enter the tunnels. Down the tunnel, there was a cage big enough for an adult to stand up in. It had chains on the wall with hand and ankle cuffs.
There's frickin' TB carved into the wall.
Rory said.
Well, obviously, this place was for people with TB, duh.
Isaac said.
I'm turning on the recorder.
Madison said.
Hello, October 31st, 2018. We're in the sanatorium, in the tunnels.
Madison said.
Is anyone here? Is there any patient here who wishes to communicate?
Boo!
Rory yelled in Madison's face. Madison gave Rory a light push.
We want to get to know you. We mean no harm. We heard that maybe you weren't treated so great here. Can you tell us more?
They heard a bang coming down the tunnel.
Okay, that's enough. Let's go.
Isaac said.
Todd, is that you?
Rory said.
We're not here to hurt you.
They listened back to their audio recording and were terrified when they heard.
We're not supposed to be here.
Isaac said, grabbing Madison's hand. Rory continued walking down the tunnel.
Oh my god, what?
Rory yelled.
What?
Oh my
Madison and
god.
Isaac ran toward her. They stood there, staring. A body, a guy. He was floating in the air, arms down at his side, and his eyes were rolled back. His mouth was open, like he was screaming silently.
That is frickin' Todd!
Rory yelled in excitement. Madison and Isaac grabbed Rory and ran back towards the entrance to the tunnel. But Rory just stood there, staring.
Guys, it's fine. This has to be something that the paranormal crew set up for fun.
She yelled. Then Rory's crossed arms shot straight at her side. Her head shot upwards and her eyes rolled back. Her body floated 2 feet off the ground. Madison and Isaac heard nothing, just silence. They ran back to find Rory. They gasped when they saw Rory floating there. Then their hands shot straight from their bodies to their side. Their heads shot straight upwards and their eyes rolled back. They were suspended in the air. 5 years later, Gina woke up from nightmares. She had recently read about 3 kids who had gone missing during a paranormal investigation at a sanatorium. In her dreams, she could see the peeling paint, the medical equipment, and 3 people hanging in demonic nooses. These nightmares kept happening more frequently until they were nightly. In her dreams, there were faces stretching the walls of her bedroom, screaming.
Find me.
Gina was a transition person. Dead people would show up everywhere for her. She would enter her living room and there would be a spirit. She would go to the grocery store and there would be a spirit. She was the only one who could see them, and she was one of the few people who could help spirits transition from living to dead. But this was a different situation. She never had spirits appear in nightmares. Nor did she have spirits come to her who seemed to be tortured. That weekend, Gina went to the sanatorium she read about in the newspapers. She climbed in through a broken window. She stood there, closed her eyes, and asked for a message. She had a terrible vision of people suspended in darkness, their limbs splayed out and their eyes rolled back. She opened her eyes quickly and gasped. She kneeled down, clasped her hands, and closed her eyes.
Please release them. Please.
Gina said.
Death, please come. Death, I need you.
She said. She felt hands grab her throat and she could barely breathe. A huge shadow emerged from the ceiling and moved down the wall towards her.
Set them free.
She struggled to get out. A shadow overcame the dark room that Madison, Rory, and Isaac were in. They dropped to the floor as if they had been tied up by a string, and that string had been cut. The only thing stronger than a demon is death itself. And now Madison, Isaac, and Rory could at least live a good death. Chapter 2: Cancel Culture. A pudgy, middle-aged man drove his highly efficient and highly fashionable electric car up to the security gates of a Hollywood studio. A banner advertisement above the gatehouse reads, ANS, America's #1 TV network. Below that, much smaller letters next to an asterisk read, according to some key demographics. As the man lowered his window to swipe his pass card, a 30-something woman wearing a long, flowing, silvery dress surprised him by poking her head in.
You jerk! How could you cancel Star Ghost?
She seethed.
Do you know how many people love that show? Do you know how many people rely on that show to get them through a terrible week? You can't just rip people's hearts out like that without warning.
The man sighed. He'd heard this nonsense before, on Twitter, and email, and even some old-fashioned letters.
It was last in its time slot. Come on,
he said. The security gate arm lifted, and the man put it in drive.
Look, lady, go out and find a life, okay? And stop wearing costumes outside the house.
The man snickered as he peeled into the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, he could see a number of other protesters, all wearing white, in some sad little homage to the main character on Star Ghost. The show had been a middling hit in its early days, especially with single women, but it had been on for 11 seasons now, and it was simply costing more to produce than it was generating in revenue.
Oh, kids today.
The man thought as he drove across the lot.
They just aren't very interested in stories about a hunky, handsome ghost alien who solves crimes of the heart.
The man pulled into a parking spot under a sign reading, Mike Mulberry, ANS, VP of Programming. As Mike climbed the stairs to his second-floor bungalow office, he shook his head. What fresh hell would he be in for today?
Good morning, Mr. Mulberry. Your coffee.
Mike's secretary, Skylar, handed him a to-go cup as he passed the reception area towards his office.
Push my 10:30 to 11. I gotta take a crunch.
Mike said.
Oh, and you should have warned me about the protesters. I would have come in the back gate had I known. Next time, you're fired.
Skylar could only sigh.
Good morning to you, too.
She muttered. As Mike came out from his morning constitutional, he was already on the phone.
I don't care if he's feeling overwhelmed,
Mike said, wearing earbuds.
You tell that glorified dialogue robot to get back to set and act his ass off.
Mike sat behind his massive wood desk, leaned back, and put his feet up.
Or, I'm sending our lawyer to his trailer in the next 10 minutes. Yeah, hang on a minute, Frank.
Mike covered one of his earbuds and called out,
Skylar, get in here. Bring the iPad and that beautiful behind.
Skylar came into the office, but she didn't look too happy about having to be there. She reminded her boss for the umpteenth time about using that type of demeaning language.
I don't want to have to call HR.
She said, not sitting down. Annoyed, Mike waved his hand dismissively.
You know what the problem is with you snowflakes these days?
He asked.
You can't take a joke or a compliment.
Standing in the doorway, Skylar seethed, her fist curled into a ball. She was so sick of hearing about how Gen Xers were the best, and about how her generation was too soft and too sensitive. She reared the iPad back.
What the hell?
Mike was in shock at the act.
Did you just throw an iPad through my window?
Find yourself another snowflake.
Skylar said.
I quit.
Oh, Frank, you still there?
Mike asked.
Dude, I know. Can you believe this? No one wants to pay their dues anymore. All right, call me back later.
Mike opened his laptop and started typing. Losing secretaries, and they were secretaries, he thought, not personal assistants, was not a big deal for Mike. He'd gone through half a dozen in the 2 years since he took over programming the schedule at ANS Network. You'll just find another one on Reddit or Insta or somewhere. There was always another pretty young thing looking to break into the biz.
You're fired, Skylar.
Mike called.
Get out.
But instead, Mike's office door flew open to reveal swarthy and buff two-time Emmy-winning actor Jack Hamilton, the former star of Star Ghost, currently unemployed. Strangely, Jack was in full costume, wearing the flowing white robes his character wore, and his skin had been made up to look pale and waxy, just like Star Ghost.
Jack!
Mike said as he stood and came around his desk.
Good to see you. Look, I still don't have anything new for you, but I have a ton of scripts here on my desk. I'm sure we'll find something soon. I'll call you, okay?
Mike tried to escort Jack Hamilton back through the office door, but Jack didn't budge. Mike had it on his tip of his tongue to ask Jack about the full costume and makeup, but he forgot about it when he placed his hand on the actor's shoulder and found it ice cold to the touch.
Oh, you okay, buddy?
Mike asked.
You look like death warmed over.
The person standing before Mike slowly raised his arm, and suddenly Mike flew across the room over his desk and slammed into his desk chair.
What the hell?
Mike wondered, stunned. Jack Hamilton, or at least someone who looked like Jack Hamilton in character as Starghost, then floated over to the desk. Mike knew this was impossible, even in his disoriented state. But damn if the man did not just float across the room, he was sure of it.
23.
The Starghost bellowed.
23 shows you have cancelled in the past 5 seasons.
Confused, Mike sputtered that it was his job to cancel shows, and create shows too, he also pointed out. But Starghost was having none of it.
Do you know how many of us you've abandoned to the ether?
The Starghost asked.
You mean actors?
Mike wondered.
Characters!
Starghost yelled. A muscle-bound strongman appeared over Starghost's shoulder, wearing a cape.
This,
He explained, was
Rukan.
heroic savior of the Viking people on the show Battleland. He was the most popular Halloween costume of 2018, beloved by fans, and yet Mike had cancelled him. Then a stern young woman in a space officer's uniform appeared next to Mike, startling him as she sat on his desk and crossed her legs. Starghost reminded Mike about Captain Thorne, leader of the SS Bombay.
What about her and her intrepid crew? What happened to them after you cancelled their show?
Mike stuttered.
We can maybe do a movie. Yeah.
A woman wearing a nurse's uniform then stepped out from behind Starghost.
And this,
The ghost explained.
this was Alma, the wryly funny night nurse who was just trying to find love in the big city. But no one watches sitcoms anymore.
Mike protested.
So you murdered her,
Captain Thorne said.
just like you murdered the rest of us.
I didn't murder anyone.
Mike sputtered.
With one flick of a pen, Mike had cancelled them.
Captain Thorne explained.
Same difference. You killed them dead, never to be alive again. Just like all the dozens of other beloved television characters he'd cancelled over the years. 104 characters. You're a regular serial killer.
Nurse Alma said.
It's just business.
Mike protested.
It's show business.
From her perch on Mike's desk, Captain Thorne picked up a script from atop a pile of scripts and tore the cover page off. She then flicked the paper across Mike's face.
Ah!
He cried out in pain as a wide and deep paper cut yawned open on his cheek, revealing the pulpy red inside. The captain then flicked Mike's other cheek, creating another gaping cut.
Oh!
Blood streamed down his face.
Skylar. Yeah. She spiked my coffee. This is all hallucination.
Mike thought wildly as he clutched his bleeding face. Then Nurse Alma leaped atop Mike's desk and kicked him across the face with her sensible nurse crocs.
Oh, my teeth.
Mike muttered as he spit 2 crowns onto his desk with a clatter. Suddenly, a little boy rose up from behind the desk. It was little Amir, the precocious main character on the recently canceled family dramedy, Our House. Amir snatched up a stapler from the desk, opened it with a click, and then slammed it down on Mike's hand over and over.
Oh!
Mike cried out in agony as he tried to lift his hand, only to find it had been attached to the desk somehow. Suddenly, Starghost appeared standing directly behind Mike's chair. Grabbing his neck, Starghost lifted the executive up. Mike's hand pulled free from the staples with a sickening, fleshy rip. He groaned in pain as Starghost carried him by the neck over to the open, broken window. In the distance, Mike could see the collection of protesters, dressed all in white, carrying signs outside the front gate.
Save Starghost!
They chanted.
Save Starghost!
Starghost put his mouth beside Mike's ear and spoke barely above a whisper.
You cancel these shows without any thoughts to what it will do to the people who need them. Oh, need them?
Mike sputtered through a bloody mouth.
It's just TV. You care about the bottom line.
Starghost explained.
But you care nothing for them, the people who actually help line your pockets.
Captain Thorne joined them at the window, her arms crossed.
If you call this a business,
She said.
then those are your customers down there. And you know what they say about customers.
The nurse said.
They're always right.
Mike choked out.
By gum, I think he's got it.
The nurse said. In the same measured, professional tone she used to talk computers into self-destructing, Captain Thorne explained.
See, to some of those people down there, we are part of their extended family.
As the captain spoke, Mike's office began to fill with one fictional character after another. The plucky teenage nerd just trying to get through high school. The gilded Scotsman with a broadsword who only wants to defend his land. The time-traveling golden retriever trying to find his owner who is lost in the past. Dozens of characters now filled the small room, and they all leveled stone-cold looks at the bewildered Mike Mulberry, VP of Programming.
So what?
Mike managed to sputter.
You want me to uncancel them?
The Starghost, who still had Mike by the neck, pulled him closer until they were nose to nose. For a brief moment, Mike could see down the ghost's mouth. It was a black void, but there was static, and his breath smelled of putrefaction and waste.
It's too late for that,
Starghost whispered. Then the figure, who still looked very much like beloved TV actor Jack Hamilton, lifted the hapless executive into the frame of his newly broken window. Across the parking lot, on the sidewalk outside the security gates, the woman in the white dress continued marching in a circle along with a number of other disappointed fans of Starghost.
Save Starghost!
They chanted.
Save Starghost!
Then, one of the protesters gasped.
Look!
The protesters all turned towards the bungalow, where they spotted a man standing in the broken open window of an office. A few feet below was his precious e-car. He was all alone.
That's the guy who canceled Starghost.
Oh!
Suddenly, Mike fell forward, plummeting as his arms flailed. One of the protesters screamed before Mike Milbury landed on the roof of his car with a metallic crunch. Then, after a moment of utter shock, the crowd began chanting,
Reboot! Reboot! Reboot!
Chapter 3, The House on the Edge of the Woods. July 1986. As Emily was carrying one of the last boxes into the house, she swore she could hear children playing and laughing. It sounded like it was coming from the forest that surrounded her newly purchased home. She called out to her 6-year-old son, Josh. He came out of the house and said it wasn't him making the noise. Then, the sounds were gone.
It must have been the wind,
Emily thought to herself. She entered the big old house and set the box on the floor. She had gotten the house on a steal. It was a huge house with 7 bedrooms. Emily bought it with the inheritance from her parents. She could afford it because of the house's horrifying history. Emily hoped that people would want to spend the night in a haunted bed and breakfast. After the last of the boxes were moved in, Emily offered to buy her friends pizza for dinner, but they all turned her down. They said it was late and they had to get home. She thought that was odd. Her friends usually liked to stick around and socialize. But Emily didn't mind because she was feeling exhausted herself. She set a mattress up in Josh's room and rolled out a sleeping bag for him. She kissed him goodnight and then she went up to her room. She pulled a comforter out of a box, lay down on the mattress, and went to sleep herself. The next thing Emily knew, she woke up from a terrible nightmare, but she couldn't remember the details. It unsettled her so much that she couldn't go back to sleep. No clocks were set up in the house, so Emily had no idea what time it was. But since she couldn't sleep, she decided to unpack the kitchen. She would make Josh his favorite, pancakes with real maple syrup. Emily unpacked the kitchen as the sun rose. Besides the possibility of the bed and breakfast being haunted, Emily hoped her cooking would lure people. She was a professionally trained chef and had worked in several high-end restaurants. She worked many nights. Then she realized she only found joy in cooking for her family in the morning. Then Jake left her and started another family a few years ago. She understood that he did not want to be with her, but she didn't understand why he had shunned Josh. But that's the way it happened. Josh came downstairs as the kitchen was nearly set up, and Emily started cooking breakfast. Emily asked Josh how he slept.
Okay, I guess.
Just okay?
Yeah, it was noisy.
Sorry, I thought you wouldn't notice me unpacking the kitchen. I just wanted to get some pancakes ready for you.
No, it wasn't that. It was like kids playing.
Are you sure, honey? I don't think there are any who live close by. They all live in town, and you'll meet them when you start school in September.
Josh shrugged his shoulders and sat down at the kitchen table. Emily served him some pancakes. He ate while Emily finished up the kitchen. Over the next several days, Emily continued to unpack her and Josh's personal belongings. They didn't have much, and it didn't even come close to filling out the huge house. Then one afternoon, Emily was cleaning the bathtub in one of the bathrooms. The tub had an odd stain, but she managed to scrub it away. Just as she finished, she could hear a piano softly playing in another room. She stopped what she was doing and looked around for the source of the sound. She thought she must have left a radio on somewhere. But everywhere she went, the music didn't get any louder or quieter. It just always seemed out of grasp. Then, the music just stopped. Emily thought it was strange, but she decided to go back to cleaning. When she returned to the bathroom, she saw that the stain had returned. So once again, she scrubbed it away. While Emily cleaned, Josh mostly hung out in the basement. It was a large, unfinished basement where there was a washer and dryer. Emily could hear him playing and talking to himself. She went downstairs to wash some bed sheets.
Hi, honey. What are you doing?
Playing with my friends.
He went back to chatting away by himself.
Who are your friends?
Sally, Jamie, Henry, and Jenny.
Oh, yeah?
Danny also wants to play with us, but we don't like him.
Why not?
Because he's mean.
Weird, Emily thought to herself. Danny was the kid who lived here before. It must be a coincidence.
Okay, well, you have fun. Can you call me when the washing machine finishes?
Yes, Mama.
After the washing machine finished, Emily hung the sheets out on the line in the backyard. Once again, she thought she could hear children laughing and playing in the woods.
Is anyone there?
Emily called out. She heard the laughing and playing, but no one responded. She walked into the woods towards what she thought was the source of the sounds. But as she moved closer, the sounds seemed to get further away. Then they stopped. Emily went back to hanging up the laundry and then went back inside. That night, Emily and Josh went to bed. Emily suddenly had her hands around someone's throat. Emily quickly realized she was choking Josh. But she couldn't help herself. In fact, she felt her grip tightening around his little neck. Then Emily shot up in bed.
It had been a nightmare. But what a nightmare. It felt so real.
Emily actually went to Josh's bedroom, and he was sound asleep.
Thank God.
She then went back to bed, but she couldn't sleep. The dream just seemed too real. That morning, exhausted, Emily washed the other bedrooms. In a few days, the furniture for these rooms would arrive. She then went into one of the bathrooms and noticed that the strange stain had returned to the tub. Emily thought she needed a stronger cleaner to deal with the stain. After a full day of cleaning, Emily put Josh to bed, and she went to bed herself. Suddenly, she was stabbing Josh as he begged her to stop. But she kept stabbing him. The blood felt warm on her hands and her body as it splashed on her. Once again, Emily woke up. She instinctively tried to wipe the blood off her, but there was none. She checked on Josh again. He was quietly sleeping in his bed. Emily went back to bed and tried to get back to sleep. She knew that in the back of her mind, she must subconsciously be thinking about what had happened in the house before she and Josh moved in. Then she was sure she heard piano music playing. She got out of bed and looked all over the house for the source. But then it stopped on its own. Emily went back to bed, and of course, she couldn't sleep. Once the sun came up, she got out of bed. That day, several beds and dressers were delivered. As the last bed was being moved in, one of the movers called Emily into the room. He explained that they had damaged the floor, but it wasn't their fault. There was a loose floorboard. Emily looked at the floor, and he was right. She said it was okay and hoped that no one had hurt themselves. After the delivery people left, Emily went and assessed the damage. The room formerly belonged to Danny. Emily wasn't superstitious, but she didn't want her son sleeping in the same room as the boy who had previously lived there. Emily looked down in the hole in the floor, and something shiny caught her eye. She reached her hand into the hole. Then the doorbell startled her. She ignored the doorbell and continued to search for the item. She felt it and was able to pull it up. It was a key. Then the doorbell rang again. Emily put the key on the bedside table and went to the front door. She opened the door, and there was a smaller, older woman holding a pie.
Hello?
Emily said.
Hello, I'm Agnes Smith. I'm your closest neighbor. I live about 500 yards down the road.
Oh, yes, I know the house.
Well, I heard you bought the house, and I thought I'd bring you a pie to welcome you to the area.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Would you like to come inside and have a slice?
Agnes looked inside the house from the front entrance, and Emily sensed that she didn't want to come in.
Or would you like to have some tea on the patio?
Well, if you have some ready, I suppose I could have a cup.
It will be a second. Go out to the patio and I'll bring it out.
Emily poured the tea, cut 2 pieces of pie, and set them on a tray. She then brought the tray outside to Agnes, who was sitting outside, looking uncomfortable. Emily sat down and immediately started talking about what she planned on doing with the big old house, while Agnes listened politely.
Are you aware of what happened in that house?
Well, from what I read in the newspapers, you knew Dorothy and Daniel?
I did, and Martin. He was Dorothy's husband and Daniel's father.
What happened to him? I never came across anything about him in the articles.
Well, he killed himself about 2 years before the, incident.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Oh, he shot himself in the head with a shotgun in the upstairs bathtub.
Emily instantly thought of the stain that never seemed to go away.
Oh, poor little Danny. He must have been 7. He was the one who found him.
What was Danny like?
Oh, he was a lovely boy. He was always riding around on his bicycle. It was a special bike where kids could stand on the back. He always had kids on the back of that thing. It was the only way kids would be able to get here.
He was a popular kid?
Oh my, yes. He had many friends. He was also very polite to adults. He was such a talented piano player.
Emily nearly choked on her tea.
He played the piano?
He sure did. Even for being so young, he was incredible. It was always so nice to walk by the house on a warm night and the windows were open. I'd stop outside and listen to him. It was beautiful. It's such a shame he didn't get a chance to grow up.
Yes, it is. Do you know what happened? If you don't want to talk about it, I understand. It's just that the newspapers don't always get it right, and I want to know what happened in the house I'm living in.
That's fair. Well, Danny was warm and polite and friendly. His mother, Dorothy, was the opposite of that. She was cold and distant and mean. She taught school in town. I think she taught the 5th or 6th grade or something like that. She was incredibly strict and not many of the children liked her. After she lost her husband, it was like she didn't even care. No one saw her shed a tear or anything. Well, just about 10 years ago now, in the middle of the night, Dorothy took an axe and hacked poor little Danny to death in his bed. Oh, it was terrible. From what I heard, they had to have a closed casket funeral. Oh, then after killing her son, Dorothy went and drank acid. Oh, her death must have been horrible. Many people in the area think she chose such a painful way to die to punish herself for what she did to her son.
That's awful. I had no idea that's what happened. The reports just said she took her own life. I think one article said she poisoned herself.
It was terrible.
Then she looked out into the woods.
I don't suppose,
Then she trailed off.
What is it?
No, I really shouldn't say anything.
No, please tell me. I spent all my money on this house in the world.
Well, it's not about the house per se. When you did your research on the house, did you read anything else about problems in the town?
No, what do you mean?
The problems is probably the wrong word to use, but shortly after Martin took his life, some children in the town went missing. 4 in all.
Oh my God, that's awful.
They never have been found. After Dorothy killed Danny, well, the children stopped going missing. So people thought that she was the one who killed them. People surmised she would have been able to lure them into a car because she was a well-known teacher. Many of the townsfolk believe she killed them and buried them in the forest somewhere. Some people claim they can hear children playing or laughing in the forest. But I don't believe in any of that stuff.
Emily decided not to tell Agnes about what she heard from the forest.
Do you know any of the missing kids' names?
Yes, it was so terrible. I even knew some of the families. I felt so bad for them. The Barnes girl, her name was Jennifer. I think she was 6. Another was a girl, Sally Butler, who was 7. Henry Jones was 7, and then that young boy, he was 4. Right, James Mailer, yes.
Emily felt the color drain from her face.
Are you okay, dear?
Yes, sorry. It's just been exhausting moving in, and all of a sudden it's hit me.
Of course. I better be going. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'll stop by in a few days to pick up my pie plate, if that is okay.
That would be great. The pie was delicious. Thanks for stopping by.
Emily immediately went downstairs to where Josh was playing.
Honey, what did you say your friends' names were?
Jenny, Sally, Henry, and Jamie. Why, Mama?
It's nothing.
But Emily thought she was going to throw up. There had to be a logical explanation for all this, but she couldn't think of one. Emily went to lie down because she was feeling exhausted. She woke up a few hours later as the sun was setting. She went into the basement looking for Josh, but couldn't see him. She called out for him, and he responded. He was behind the water heater. He was trying to open a door. Emily had never seen the door before.
What are you doing?
Trying to open the door, Mama, but it's locked.
Okay. Well, come upstairs and help me make dinner.
After dinner, Emily put Josh to bed. She had a feeling that the key she found earlier that day would unlock the door in the basement. She wasn't sure what she would find in there, but after talking to Agnes, she was definitely curious. However, Emily was overwhelmingly tired, even though she had napped that afternoon, so she went to bed herself. When Emily woke up, she was standing. It was cold and dark, and she could feel the wind blowing. Then she heard children laughing and singing.
Oh my God, I'm in the forest. How the hell did I get out here?
Emily thought. She was in a small opening that was about 20 square feet. Then she could hear children's voices say,
Come play with us.
Emily wanted to scream, but she needed to focus. She was wearing a bathrobe and slippers, but she had no idea in the forest where she was. It was too dark. The only light was the moon. She couldn't see her house. She looked around and something caught her eye. She went over and picked it up. It was a hatchet. She decided to hack symbols into the trees on the four corners of the opening. She wanted to mark the trees so that when she started walking back to the house and happened to circle back, she would know she had walked in a circle. By the time she was done, the sun was coming up. Emily decided to trust her gut and walked in the direction of the third tree. After about 3 minutes of walking, she could see her house. She got into the shower and wondered how she could have gone out in the forest. She had clearly sleepwalked, but she had never done anything like that before. It seemed amazing to her that she managed to get her housecoat and slippers on, get out of the house, walk to the clearing without hitting a tree, all while asleep. Emily had a dark feeling about why she had walked out there. She went out to the shed and found an old shovel. She got Josh and told him they were going for a walk in the woods. Emily felt guided as she walked back out to the clearing. She told Josh to stay in her eyesight, and then she started digging. But she found nothing. On the fourth hole, she struck something. She moved some dirt, and she saw it was a child's shoe. She stopped digging, and she got Josh and went back to the house. Emily knew she had to call the police, but what would she say? She couldn't tell him the truth because she wasn't even sure if she believed it. Emily knew she had to check one more thing. She looked around for the key and found it on the bedside table in Danny's old room. She then went into the basement. She put the key in the lock and turned it. The door unlocked. She opened the door and it was a small closet. Inside were 4 canisters of film and an old 8mm projector. Emily got a bad feeling in the pit of her stomach. She opened one of the canisters and inside of it was an 8mm film reel. Emily got the projector and put it on an old table that was in the basement. She plugged in the projector and pointed it at the wall. She then fed the film in and started watching. Images of a boy tied to a chair flashed onto the wall. He had a gag in his mouth. He looked about 9 years old. It looked like he was in the basement, just a few feet from where the projector was set up. Then another young boy, who was 10 or 11, came onto the screen. Emily recognized him from the old newspaper clippings. It was Danny. He was carrying a large butcher knife. Suddenly, he started hacking at the boy in the chair. Emily gasped as tears rolled down her face. She wanted to stop watching, but she couldn't. She couldn't turn away from Danny's smiling face as he murdered that poor boy. As the film ended, everything suddenly clicked into place. Emily knew what had happened. Danny would bring children here and kill them. Not wanting her son to get in trouble, Dorothy decided to bury the bodies, each time hoping it would be the last time he killed a child. When it became apparent that Danny was a monster and wouldn't stop killing, Dorothy decided she would deal with him herself. She then took her own life as punishment for what she did. After a few hours of thinking, Emily drove into town. She went to a payphone and made an anonymous phone call to the police. She directed them to where she found the shoe. The police descended on the area. They found the bodies of the 4 missing children. It finally gave some closure to the families. Emily let the police search her house, but it had been 10 years since Dorothy and Danny had died, and they didn't find anything of interest. They didn't find the 4 rolls of 8mm film. Emily had destroyed those. Everything that Dorothy went through, Emily understood. Dorothy was trying to protect her son, even if he was a monster. A few weeks later, Emily opened the bed and breakfast, and it was an instant hit. The bodies being found on the property brought in morbid tourists who wanted to walk in the woods. Emily stopped hearing the children laughing and playing, but some guests claimed that they heard it. Strange things still happened in the house, but Emily didn't mind because she thought it was good for business. The only thing that she cared about was that she no longer had nightmares about killing her son. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.